But I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about World War II, what you remember, what it was like, and if you remember VE Day, which was May 8th.
Oh, you know where I was, E-Day?
Where?
I was in the city of Washington, D.C. The streets were so full of people, the buses could not run.
Wow.
I watched a big bottle of alcohol of some kind start way down the street and passed it hand by hand down the street till it was all gone.
What were you doing in DC?
I worked there for the Navy Department.
Oh, wow. What did you do? Can I ask?
Uh, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But the funny thing about it is that when we went there to work, they told us what the people we worked with, we never talked about that. We never talked about what we did. It all stayed inside that building. And, you know, I think that's what happened. We didn't have people checking us out or anything. We just did it. Yeah.
Well, of course, I mean, during wartime, right? Had to keep everything hush hush.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like living in DC during the war?
Well, I liked all the museums, of course. We made it a point every weekend we spent it somewhere in a museum. But when we went out to the museums, it was always full of servicemen from everywhere. And at the end of the day, we'd go to the museums together, and they'd buy their lunch, we'd buy our lunch. And when the day was over, they went their way and we went ours. So it was different.
So there were a lot of service members kind of coming through DC on their way to and from.
Yeah. Well, see, they had a big Marine base there. They also had a big Navy base there. And so we saw a lot of them. Some of them had already been overseas in action, and some of them most of them had already been and had come back to Washington for some reason. I don't know what. Yeah.
Do you remember things like was there a lot of rationing in DC where you had to ration food and supplies?
Yes, we did. The Navy Department found us a place to live when they hired us. They told us they'd found us a place to live. And we lived with it was a grandmother and a daughter and her daughter, 3 generations in the house, but yet they found room to rent a room to us. And we hadn't been there long, and the grandmother approached me one day and she says, "Girls, I know you're not eating your supper right." And she says, "If you will write home and get your ration books, I'll cook your meal at nighttime for 25 cents. So, of course, we wrote home and got them. Mother didn't need them. And she was so proud we could not have given her a gift of any kind that was as good as our ration books to her. And she did cook. She was a great cook. Yeah. So that's the only way it bothered us. We didn't need gas. We didn't need anything. So she got our ration cards, and we enjoyed it.
Where were you from originally?
I was from Pontotoc, Mississippi.
Oh, excellent. So was it a big change moving to the city of DC?
Oh, yeah. The further side been about out from home was about 100 miles away to Memphis, and that was it. So we rode up on a Pullman train and spent the night on the train. And it was the first time I had ever seen the link sausage. That was the first time they served them to us for breakfast. Oh, I thought they was the best things I had ever had. Yeah, it was greenhorns going up there. Another one of my classmates went the same time that I did, and both of us was just as green as grass. We didn't know anything, but we learned.
If there was one thing you wanted young people today to know about World War II or understand about that time in our country, what would you want them to know or to remember?
Well, see, I was in high school, and we had a lot of men that was drafted out of high school, because when they turned 18, you know, they could draft them. And I think what sticks with me now is took those kids that had been just like me, just here, and that's all. And they left here as boys, you might say, but then when they came home, they were men after they had fought through all that. So I think that was about the biggest thing. And I don't know if it really hit me till after it was all over or not. But that was kind of sad. It just took their youth away from them.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Is there anything else you wanted to tell me about the war, about your experience during that time?
I think one of the things that hit me the hardest was when they opened up the concentration camps in Germany, that they made pictures and they put them on boards almost as big as plywood, blew them up big, and set them at a lot of the entrances. They had them there at the Navy Department as we went in. That was sad. Now, I mean, that of all the bombings and everything else, that was one of the saddest things that I saw. It was awful. And of course, they were blown up. They were bigger than what they really were, but it was awful.
I find it interesting that they actually had them for you guys to see at the Navy Department so that people would know of the atrocities and know what had happened.
They did. They did.
Wow.
And they even had one, you know, the Japanese had a little plane that one person, it was a bomb, really. And one person sat in that plane. And when he dove his plane into a ship, he went too. It was suicide. I think maybe they called them suicide bombers.
Mm-hmm.
They brought one and parked it in front of the Navy Department. And there his shoes was down on the floor, and they were made out of steel or something, and they were bolted to the floor. So they meant for them to stay with it.
Wow.
It was some pretty bad things.
Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit about your experience. I'm a tour guide here in DC, and we're preparing some videos and some information to share online with some of the students that can't come to DC that would normally come this time of year to go to the World War II Museum and see the Holocaust Museum and see those things.
Yeah. Well, there's one other thing. While I was up there, I worked on Massachusetts Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
you know, at one Embassy Road. And I worked in Lars Anderson Mansion, which now is a museum. But they had everything taken out of it. I was a receptionist, and none of the statues or none of that was there. But I worked there for a long time while I was up there. And my grandson went back later. He was up there. He lives up there now. And they were having a tour. So he got there one day just in time that they were having the a tour group go through. And so as the guide was talking about it, and he told him, he said, you know, my grandmother worked here during World War II. She says, in all the years that I have been a tour guide, you are the first person that knew anybody that worked in this building. And of course, now they've got it fixed up, the tapestries and all that in there. It's a museum.
Yes, I sometimes take groups along Embassy Row, and I've seen that building, and it's hard to imagine it as like an office or a work site. But I know during World War II, that was very common. A lot of these buildings were converted into government buildings.
Yeah. It was a beautiful building. You went out back, and there was a big garden out there in the back. You know, we usually went out there and ate our lunch every day. But
not a bad place to go to work.
Yeah, it wasn't much work to it. I just answered the phone and checked everybody that came in. Yeah, but that was quite an experience. So I guess so. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Miss Ann, it has been so nice to speak with you. I so appreciate you sharing your experience. You know, this year marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the war, and there were supposed to be a lot of celebrations to honor all those men who served. And of
Oh,
course, with
yeah.
this virus, we can't do that. So you being willing to talk online, let me record you. I really appreciate that. I'll email Gloria anything we use that includes you so you can see what we're doing.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, it was quite an experience. It was quite an experience, but I wouldn't take anything for it. But I, I, I just don't want people to forget what those men went through during World War II. You take now, they can get on the computer and see them. They hear from them all the time. If we heard twice a month, we were lucky. And all we knew, if they had a New York address, they were in Europe. If they had a California address, they were in the South Pacific. And so that's all we knew. We just didn't know very much. But,
Yeah, and a very important time. Well, thank you so much, Miss Ann. Please stay safe with all this virus going around. Please thank Rhonda for setting up the call for me.
I sure will, because I don't know a thing about this kind of stuff.
Well, thank you so much. You stay safe.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.